All hell broke loose. The entire street erupted into a synchronized explosion of lights. Every house, every tree, every mailbox and shrub flashed in perfect rhythm to Mariah Carey's "All I Want for Christmas Is You." The sidewalks lit up. The inflatable Santas started dancing. The rooftop reindeer bobbed their heads to the beat. And my personal favorite addition, the massive neon sign I had placed directly in front of Karen's house, flashing in all caps. "Merry Christmas from your favorite neighborhood light show." I should have known this Christmas was going to come with extra holiday misery the second I saw Karen stomping across my lawn, clipboard clutched in her claws, wearing her usual expression of disapproval mixed with self-importance. She stopped at the edge of my property, nostrils flaring like a bull ready to charge. Behind her, my glorious holiday display twinkled in all its synchronized, music-playing, candy cane-colored glory. I took a sip of my hot cocoa, utterly unbothered. "Morning, Karen, you look festive." She did not, in fact, look festive. She looked like the living embodiment of a tax audit. "There's a problem with your decorations," she said, flipping open her clipboard like she was about to deliver a Supreme Court ruling. I raised an eyebrow. "Is the problem that they bring joy to children and families during the holiday season?" Her eye twitched. "The problem is that they're excessively bright and disruptive to the aesthetic integrity of the neighborhood." "Aesthetic integrity?" I repeated, pretending to ponder this. "Karen, it's Christmas. There's literally a 12-foot inflatable Santa in Greg's yard, and I don't see you over there trying to regulate his integrity." "That's different," she snapped. "Your house is too much." Now that was a compliment. She held out a formal notice, waving it in my face. "You need to tone it down immediately." I took the paper and skimmed it. A demand to dim my lights, limit the display hours, reduce the visual disruption. I let out a full, hearty laugh, the kind that comes straight from the belly. "Oh, Karen, you almost got me. For a second, I thought you were serious." Her face remained stone cold. Oh, she was serious. "Wait," I said, my smile dropping. "You actually think you can police my holiday cheer?" "This is an official HOA mandate," she said, straightening her back like she was some kind of dictator of suburbia. "Failure to comply will result in fines." Now at this point, I should have seen the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. But I made a critical mistake. I underestimated just how much of a Grinch Karen could be. So I ignored her warning. For the next few nights, I let my decorations shine in all their dazzling, synchronized, over-the-top Christmas glory. And then, exactly 3 days later, I woke up to a bright red violation notice taped to my front door. Notice of fines for noncompliance. Subject: excessive brightness violation. Dear homeowner, your property remains in violation of HOA guidelines regarding excessive holiday lighting. As of today, a fine of $100 per day will be issued until the display is removed or modified to fit within appropriate levels. Failure to comply will result in further penalties. Sincerely, Karen McDictator, HOA President. I stared at the letter, my blood boiling as I read and reread it. $100 a day? For lights? I clenched the notice in my fist, my entire soul rejecting the injustice. This wasn't about Christmas decorations. This was about Karen flexing her HOA muscles and trying to control me. And if she thought I was going to just roll over and let her steal my Christmas spirit, she had no idea what was coming. I stood in my driveway, holding Karen's ridiculous, excessive brightness violation notice, like it was a bad Christmas gift I couldn't return. The nerve of this woman. Fining me. For Christmas lights? My perfectly normal, not at all excessive synchronized holiday display? Okay, fine. Maybe it was a little excessive. Maybe my house could be seen from space. Maybe the synchronized flashing lights had caused a minor traffic jam last year when a group of parents pulled over so their kids could watch. But did that warrant a fine? Absolutely not. Karen had finally overplayed her hand. I took a slow sip of my coffee, staring up at my house, the twinkling bulbs reflecting in my window. My holiday cheer had been personally attacked, and if there was one thing I knew for certain, it was that I was not going to let Karen win. She wanted my display toned down? Oh, sweetheart, I was about to turn it up to 11. I started by doubling my original light count. A normal person would have taken this opportunity to scale back, maybe compromise a little. But I wasn't a normal person. I was a man with a grudge and an unlimited holiday budget. So I drove straight to the biggest holiday warehouse in the city and loaded up my cart like a Christmas-crazed maniac. 2 hours later, my trunk was overflowing with industrial-strength Christmas cheer. I had boxes of twinkling LEDs, color-changing strobes, and an assortment of inflatable holiday icons that ranged from classic Santa to a reindeer so large it needed to be staked down with steel rods. The cashier raised an eyebrow as she rang up my purchases. "Sir, are you decorating a house or launching a full-scale holiday invasion?" I grinned. "A little of both." She gave me a slow nod of approval. "Go get 'em." Back home, I realized this was bigger than just me. Karen had been terrorizing the neighborhood for years, writing up petty fines for things like mailboxes that weren't uniform, holiday wreaths that were too large, and Greg's inflatable Santa, which she had personally deflated last year. It was time to strike back. So under the guise of friendly holiday cheer, I went door to door, gathering an army of festive rebels. Mike, my next-door neighbor, signed on immediately. He was still bitter about Karen banning his Halloween fog machine. Mrs. Patterson down the street grinned and said she'd been waiting for a reason to unleash her penguin-shaped Christmas lights. Even Greg, who still held a grudge about inflatable Santagate, was all in. By the end of the night, Operation Blinding Christmas had officially been launched. The next evening, the neighborhood underwent a transformation. We didn't just decorate. We went nuclear. It started with my house. I strung up so many lights that I swear I could hear my electric meter screaming. My brand new rooftop Santa sleigh flashed in time with the music, and my latest purchase, a towering LED reindeer with a blinking red nose that could probably be seen from orbit, stood proudly on my lawn. Mike covered his entire house in flashing red and green strobes, turning it into a Vegas casino of Christmas cheer. Mrs. Patterson lined her roof with illuminated candy canes, and Greg went completely feral. He installed a 30-foot inflatable Santa, complete with a sound system that blared Jingle Bell Rock on a loop every 30 minutes. By the time we finished, the entire street looked like a Christmas carnival on steroids. And Karen? Karen stood on her porch, absolutely horrified. Her arms were crossed so tight, I thought she might implode. The fact that her house was the only one left in darkness just made it even better. As cars began slowing down to admire the spectacle, I could feel the rage radiating off her. I raised my cocoa in a silent toast, grinning. This was only the beginning. The moment I flipped the switch and watched my house explode into a spectacle of synchronized holiday chaos, I knew I had created a monster. A beautiful, blinding, power-sucking monster. But I wasn't stopping there. No, Karen declared war on Christmas, and I intended to win in the most obnoxious way possible. So I did what any rational, holiday-loving, HOA-hating homeowner would do. I hired a professional electrician. Mike, the electrician, arrived the next morning, standing in my driveway with a coffee in one hand and an expression that said he had no idea what he was signing up for. "So," he said, rubbing his chin as he took in the sheer level of madness already in progress, "you're telling me you want to synchronize every house on the block to a single music display?" I nodded. With perfect timing, Mike let out a low whistle. "Man, I don't even know if the Vegas Strip pulls off something this ridiculous." I clapped him on the shoulder. "Then let's make history." It took 2 full days, several miles of extension cords, and enough power to short-circuit a small country. But by the end of it, every single house on the street was wired into one glorious, synchronized light show. And when I say every house, I mean every single one. Well, except Karen's. She had refused to participate, obviously. But that was fine, because I had a plan for her house too. The night of the grand unveiling, we gathered in the street, anticipation buzzing in the air. Cars lined up at the entrance to our neighborhood, people clutching cups of hot cocoa, kids sitting on their parents' shoulders, eager to witness the madness. The HOA's worst nightmare was about to begin. I stood front and center, remote in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, my voice full of holiday vengeance, "I present to you the blinding Christmas spectacular." I pressed the button, and then all hell broke loose. The entire street erupted into a synchronized explosion of lights. Every house, every tree, every mailbox and shrub flashed in perfect rhythm to Mariah Carey's "All I Want for Christmas Is You." The sidewalks lit up, the inflatable Santas started dancing, the rooftop reindeer bobbed their heads to the beat, and my personal favorite addition, the massive neon sign I had placed directly in front of Karen's house, flashing in all caps, "Merry Christmas from your favorite neighborhood light show." Karen screamed. Not a polite gasp, not an irritated huff. A full-blown horror movie, banshee-level shriek from her dark, undecorated porch. The neighbors burst into cheers. Kids danced in the street. Someone in the crowd shouted, "I think I can feel my retinas burning." It was perfect. Then, just when I thought it couldn't get any better, the local news van rolled up. A reporter stepped out, microphone in hand, and gestured toward the spectacle behind her. "We're here at what is now being dubbed the most insane holiday display in the city." The camera panned across the flashing madness, capturing everything: the synchronized light show, the 30-foot inflatable Santa, the neon sign directly in front of Karen's house flashing like a casino billboard. Karen, still mid-meltdown, turned and ran inside like a vampire retreating from the sun. I smiled. It was shaping up to be the best Christmas ever. The morning after, the blinding Christmas spectacular trademark premiered. I awoke to the sound of pure, unfiltered HOA rage. Karen was already outside, flailing her arms at a group of HOA board members, like a general rallying her troops before battle. I stepped onto my porch, coffee in hand, watching as she waved a ridiculous stack of violation notices like they were sacred scrolls. From the way she was barking orders, you'd think I had erected a theme park instead of an extremely festive holiday display. I took a slow sip of my coffee. This was going to be fun. The first attack came in the form of legal nonsense. Karen and her band of rule-loving minions combed through every HOA guideline in existence, desperately trying to find something, anything to use against me. "You've exceeded the neighborhood's acceptable decorative display sizes limit." Except there was no such rule. "Your use of synchronized lights is disruptive to the uniformity of the neighborhood." Ah, yes, the crime of not being boring enough. "You're causing light pollution." Oh, this one was my favorite. Karen, in an absolute frenzy, called the city to report my display for excessive light pollution. A city official actually showed up, clipboard in hand, probably expecting to find some illegal Vegas Strip situation. Instead, he found a perfectly legal, neighborhood-wide synchronized holiday display, 0 zoning violations, a homeowner who had already checked every city code beforehand just to be safe. I met the inspector at the curb with a knowing smile. "Morning," I said cheerfully. "Here for the Christmas light inspection?" He sighed. "Yeah, I got a call about excessive brightness endangering public safety." I gestured around. "Just good old-fashioned holiday cheer." The man blinked at the absurdity of it all, glanced down at his paperwork, and shook his head. "Yeah, there's nothing illegal here," he muttered, clearly questioning all of his life choices that led to inspecting Christmas lights for a living. Karen, who had been hovering nearby like a vulture, screeched in protest. But it's blinding! It's unnatural!" The inspector sighed, rubbing his temples. "Ma'am, it's Christmas." She gasped like he had personally betrayed her. When that failed, Karen tried the noise complaint angle. Now, to be fair, my light show was synchronized to music. And it was loud. Jingle Bell Rock at max volume every 15 minutes probably wasn't winning me any awards with the insomniacs on the block. So Karen marched right back to the HOA office and filed an official complaint for unreasonable noise levels. I received another notice, demanding that I shut down the music portion of the display immediately. I smiled. Oh, I'd shut it down, all right. That night, I flipped the switch, and the entire light show went completely silent. The lights still flashed in perfect synchronization. Every rooftop Santa still bobbed along to an invisible beat, and the giant neon sign in front of Karen's house still blazed in glorious defiance. But now Karen had to suffer through the full, blinding horror, without even the sweet distraction of holiday music. Now she had nothing but the soul-crushing silence and the knowledge that she had lost. At around 9 p.m., I caught a glimpse of Karen standing on her porch, gripping her coffee mug with the force of a woman on the edge. I gave her a little wave. She stomped back inside. I sipped my cocoa, satisfied. Merry Christmas, Karen. At this point, Karen was hanging on by a thread. The HOA had thrown every rule in their little handbook at me. Light pollution, noise violations, visual disruption, whatever that meant. And yet, nothing stuck. But I knew Karen. She wasn't just going to give up. She was waiting, lurking like a holiday-hating gremlin, hoping I'd slip up so she could swoop in and shut down my beautiful, blinding Christmas chaos. Which is why I decided to make my next move untouchable. I wasn't just going to win this war. I was going to make it so they could never fight me again. It all started when a local holiday decoration company reached out. Apparently, thanks to all the social media attention and the fact that the local news had now done 2 separate segments on my street, my display had officially gone viral. The company, a high-end Christmas light manufacturer, sent me an email with a simple question. Would you be interested in a sponsorship? I had to read it twice to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. A sponsorship. For Christmas lights. I immediately called the number in the email. A very enthusiastic marketing rep named Lisa answered and wasted no time getting to the point. "We love what you're doing," she gushed. "We think it's the perfect embodiment of holiday spirit." I smiled, already imagining Karen's head exploding. "That's great to hear. We'd love to donate some of our premium light sets to you, and in return maybe we could call it the Newman Lights Holiday Light Show?" I nearly laughed out loud. This was perfect. Lisa continued, completely unaware that she had just handed me the single most powerful weapon against the HOA. "We were also thinking, if you'd be open to it, we could work with the city to turn it into an official event." I nearly dropped my phone. An official event. If my house and my street became a city-sponsored holiday attraction, then the HOA would have zero authority to interfere. Karen and her army of clipboard-wielding minions would never be able to shut me down. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Lisa, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful partnership." 2 days later, the sponsorship was finalized. The company sent an entire crew to upgrade my setup, installing state-of-the-art LED displays, programmable sequences, and a literal freaking light tunnel leading up to my driveway. And then, the cherry on top. The mayor's office got involved. Apparently, the media attention had caught the city's interest, and someone in local government decided it would be great PR to make this an official event. So, on a bright Saturday afternoon, the actual mayor of our city showed up in my driveway, shook my hand, and declared my light show an official community enrichment event. Which meant the HOA no longer had any legal authority over it. They couldn't fine me. They couldn't demand I shut it down. They couldn't do a single thing about it. And the best part? Karen had to stand there and smile as the mayor posed for pictures with me right in front of my glowing, synchronized, HOA-defying masterpiece. I'm not sure what was brighter that night, my lights, or the absolute, seething rage radiating off Karen's face. Either way, it was the best Christmas gift I had ever received. Karen was cornered. For weeks, she had tried everything to shut down my Christmas light display. She had thrown the HOA rulebook at me, filed bogus complaints with the city, and had probably spent sleepless nights clutching her clipboard, brainstorming ways to ruin my holiday cheer. And yet, here we were. My street was now a city-sponsored holiday event. The mayor had literally taken a selfie in front of my house. The news kept running clips of the most insane Christmas display in town. Karen had officially lost the battle. But did she give up? Of course not. Instead, she summoned the HOA board for an emergency meeting. Because when all else fails, change the rules. The meeting was packed, word had spread fast, and half the neighborhood had shown up, ready for blood. Karen sat at the head of the table, posture rigid, her usual tight-lipped, smug expression now just barely holding together. The other board members looked less confident. Probably because they had realized this was going to be a public execution. Karen cleared her throat and dramatically adjusted her reading glasses, like she was about to unveil a critical piece of legislature instead of spewing nonsense about Christmas lights. "This meeting has been called," she announced, "to address an escalating problem in our community, the unchecked excessive use of holiday decorations." A wave of incredulous muttering swept through the room. Someone actually booed. Karen ignored it, plowing ahead. "Given the situation," she said through gritted teeth, "I am proposing an amendment to our HOA guidelines, which will limit the amount of exterior holiday lighting per household to ensure a more uniform, tasteful neighborhood aesthetic." I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed, waiting for my moment. "This is absurd!" Greg, my neighbor, shot to his feet. "You didn't care about decorations last year. Why is it suddenly an issue?" Karen straightened her papers, ignoring him. "This is simply about maintaining order." Oh, that was it. That was my cue. I slowly stood up, clearing my throat. "So," I said, letting my voice drip with sarcasm, "just so I'm clear, the 10-foot fountain at the neighborhood entrance, the one with the angel peeing into a bowl, that's fine?" Karen froze. The room erupted into laughter. "That's an art piece," she snapped. "Oh, so public urination sculptures are fine, but my Christmas lights are a problem?" More laughter. Karen's eye twitched. I gestured toward the board. "How about the house with 20 inflatable flamingos in the summer?" A guy in the back nodded. "That's my house." "Are we banning flamingos?" I asked, feigning concern. Karen opened her mouth, realized she had absolutely no defense, then snapped it shut again. That's when it happened. One of the board members, Frank, sighed loudly and put his face in his hands. "Karen, just let it go," he muttered. A wave of nods and murmured agreements spread through the room. And then, the final nail in Karen's coffin, someone called for a vote. "All in favor of rejecting this ridiculous rule change?" Every single hand shot up. Every single one. Even a few HOA board members looked embarrassed as they voted against Karen's nonsense. Karen sat there, staring at the sea of hands, her entire world crumbling. And just like that, she had lost. With no way to fight back, Karen had no choice but to suffer as my glorious, city-sanctioned, HOA-proof Christmas display bathed her house in its blinding, synchronized glow. Her dark, undecorated home stuck out like a miserable lump of coal amidst the explosion of color, music, and flashing lights surrounding her. I'd catch glimpses of her peeking out through her blinds, her face permanently locked in an expression of despair. The final insult? She moved out a month later. She was gone by New Year's. Poof. Vanished. It was the greatest Christmas miracle of all. And of course, I celebrated in the only way that made sense. The next year, I doubled the lights. I made sure that Karen's old house, now owned by a lovely family who loved Christmas, was covered in decorations. I added a second neon sign. It read, "Dedicated to the memory of Karen's HOA rules, R.I.P." And as I stood in my driveway, watching the lights dance to Jingle Bell Rock in glorious synchronization, I took a deep breath of the crisp winter air, raised my hot cocoa, and whispered, "Merry Christmas, Karen."